Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. There's no visual. Oh. We got that visual right now. If you're watching this not live, you're going to want to jump forward like 5-6 minutes. I'll put a link in the description because we start early so people can come in. Otherwise, if you're here, just make sure the mic is working. I'm going to tap it. Sorry for like the 2 people that are here. All right, I got to grab that link. Then we're going to get it going. I'm amped. I'm ready to do this right now. I have to just get the link, put it on Twitter. You know the deal. You guys know the deal. Oh, the tweet's too long now. Oh no. This has never happened before. I wrote the tweet to save time, but the YouTube link made the tweet too long, so I'm just going to on the fly. That was my dog. She made a really cute noise. On the fly, just hey, no, don't do that. Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Don't do that. Okay. I tweeted it. No one's here yet. That's all good with me. Gotta prep a few. What is this? What is this? What is it, whining? We're gonna go on a walk after. Don't worry. My dog's here, special guest. So let's see. I'm just gonna make sure the tweet posted. Make sure the link got up. We are good. Boom. People in the chat. What's up? It's actually just one person. Hey Ramon, it's just me and you. How's it going? I'm gonna move some windows around. Whoa. Hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Hey, chill out. You're making us look very unprofessional on the stream, Petra. Alright, she's gonna chill out. What's up, everybody? I'm just gonna move a few things around. Just gotta get a few things ready. Before we do this, how are you guys doing? I'm gonna give my dog a treat. Also, yes, studio treat. I'm gonna move some paints around. How are you guys doing? How is November treating the people? My November is going pretty well, honestly. Let's see, what do I have to do before I do this? I gotta trim this, gotta open this paper up. What's new with me? What's going on with me on my end? I always ask, I always do this on Patreon too. I'm like, yeah, let me know how's it going with you guys. How are you guys doing? And people don't tell me how it's going with them. So if anyone wants to tell me how it's going with them, I'm open to hearing it. Otherwise with me, got a lot of stuff going on. I am hopefully about to have an absolutely insane 2 weeks in the studio, getting everything ready for the holiday season. I'm about to order the most stuff I've ever ordered for the studio, getting it ready. Dropping a ton of money that I don't really have, but it's all good, on frames and boxes and all that stuff, getting it ready, so that's cool. What else is going on with me? Mostly just that. I had to order some test frames. I got them on the floor over here. I'll pull them up. I've been training my dog. This is the pre-show. Welcome to the pre-show. So it's not really strictly art related, but it relates to life in general in a sense. I've been training my dog. That's been kind of cool. So I have to get her used to like being around people. So I literally just have been going around to like places where people are and just standing around with the dog. So that's been kind of dope. It's been kind of dope actually, just like literally standing around like outside coffee shops and bookstores just with my dog. I've been getting a lot of like interesting thinking done, as odd as that probably sounds. People like talk to me and stuff, and then she barks at them. It's a pretty good time. Otherwise, I've just been we're not going to talk about it too much. Not that we're going to avoid talking about it, but it's not exactly the subject. But it's been kind of my like listening to stuff time. Hey, don't go in there. My listening to stuff time, I've been kind of absorbed with like the news, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of always like an absurd juxtaposition where like, oh, come on, chill out. Don't do that. I'm going to put you outside the room if you do that. where like, you know, I'm listening to all this like theological stuff and mystical stuff and aesthetica stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm like bogged down, I feel like, in a way, like with the news, and I want to kind of avoid it, but at the same time, like I do enjoy it, honestly. Probably somewhat obviously if you know anything about me, but I definitely do enjoy it. So yeah, we'll just hang for a minute or two and then we'll get this going. Good evening, everyone, someone said. Perfect. Otherwise, let's see. I want to chill just like a minute or two to let people get in here. What's something cool or interesting I can show you guys? I got a bunch of stuff on this board back over here. I am basically totally absorbed getting the holiday stuff together. It's not like themed for the holidays or anything, but it's like stuff I want to have ready for the holiday season. But on this board back over here, I got a bunch of other stuff going on. Maybe I'll just show you guys some like sketches and stuff I have back over here. Ramon said I answered your last email, but I don't know if you saw it under a different name though. Maybe. I'm kind of going through my emails tomorrow, but you can bump it if you want. I have been not good at emails because I've been so absorbed like doing stuff. But yeah, hit me up. Or you can DM me on Twitter. But yeah, let's see. I'll show you guys some sketches and stuff I have going on. This is nothing really important, but I found this really cool like German etching from like back in the day, and it was about some like revolt the people had against like the clergy and stuff. So I really liked the layout of it. It had this like big fish in the sky for some reason, and in the actual German etching, like the people were like fighting like the clergy. They weren't like fighting the clergy, but they were clearly like making some stand against like the kings and, you know, the nobles and everything like that. I think it was from like some People's Revolution kind of thing in Germany. And I kind of just took the format of it. I really like the format, not really the content necessarily, because I'm not really about like people like, you know, fighting the nobles and everything, obviously. But I thought the layout was cool. So I thought these people coming together and this little like city on a hill kind of situation in here. I'll probably tweak it. It doesn't really mean anything right now. I just like sketched it out, but I'll probably tweak that, do something cool with that. Otherwise, let's see what else do I got going on over here. I got some Dogman stuff going on. I have this big board. I wish I could show you guys actually, but it would be like too much revealing the room behind me. But I have this big board and I just pin things up here when I don't want to lose track of it. So if I make any cool drawings, I just kind of want to like keep them on my radar. I just pin them on here. I have this one at this spot near my house. Doesn't really mean anything. We'll do a few minutes of this for the pre-show and then we'll get it going. Let's see what else is cool over here. I got a bunch of these animal drawings. So these are old enough. Normally I just post this stuff on Patreon, but it's long enough that I can show the people now. But I got a bunch of these like animal drawings also where I sketched out all these like animals like in these frames. I got one of cardinals and bears and deer and stuff like that. Again, it doesn't really mean anything necessarily. Actually, I drew this when I was thinking about like the College of Cardinals and like all the cardinals like in the Catholic Church. So they're like cardinals, sort of like a visual pun, I guess. What else do I got going on over here? I found this sketch from a really long time ago. It's not really that good. Normally, I only show people like the hardcore like finished products. But I drew this little picture, and I was thinking about the three mages. They're not really mages. What are they called in the three magi in the Bible? Who come to see Jesus. You know, I was thinking about Advent. I drew this like last year, maybe even like the year before. It's probably last year. And I really love that theme because, I mean, obviously I'm a person who used to be like a cult guy and now I'm like Christian guy. So I really love that detail is in the Bible where these three magi's come to see Christ right when he's born. And somehow I just feel like that detail, like really like speaks to me in some way that like right at the birth of Jesus, these three kind of like, in case anyone doesn't know, magi is related to the word magician, probably not like one step directly away, but it is like related. So I just love that detail of these guys that like see this star and like come and they basically like, I guess you could say they like convert to Christianity. I mean, that's not like exactly what happens, but I mean, it's kind of like the subtext of like what happens in a way. So that would be cool. I don't know if I'm actually going to do it or not, but I thought it would be cool to make a graphic where they're wearing these like magic hats and there's this like child here and then I got this pattern around the star. I drew this a long time ago. It's also funny. Something else I'll mention, then we'll get started in like just a minute. Is if I go back, you know, it's kind of like if you play an instrument, if anyone here plays an instrument, you're always like making progress, but you don't really realize it. In your mind, you're like the same level of good past a certain point, you know, once you learn to play the instrument. But then if you go back and listen to a recording of yourself like a year or like two ago, you're like, wow, I got way better. That's kind of been happening to me in the studio where I'll look at just like random drawings from like 2 years ago, probably about 2 years ago is about the window. And I'm like, wow, if I did that now, it would be so much different. And it's funny because, I come here, I sit at my desk every single day. So, of course, I don't notice the change. But, when I go back, I'd say the cutoff is probably like 2 years ago. Stuff I was doing last year, I'm like, yeah. I mean, I'm not that distant away from it where I'm like, oh, there's clearly a gap here. But that's been kind of interesting, too, just going through the archives and stuff. Let's see, people asking me stuff in the chat, and then we'll pull the trigger. What do you think of the Russian Orthodox cathedral dedicated to the end of World War II? I don't know if I saw that, but someone posted a really awesome Russian Orthodox church, and they said it was a church dedicated to the military. I don't know if it's the same thing, but if it's that, then it looks awesome. It looks really sick. All right, it's 7:05. I think we're just going to pull the trigger right now. I think we're going to do it. Had shrimp for dinner and thought of your dog. Epic. I fed my dog fish the other day. It was really tight. We had blackfish together, actually. All right, the people are here. Enough people are here. I actually, the whole time I've been doing this, I've literally never even looked at the number of people that are watching. I don't even know how to do it, but maybe I'll just never look because I don't really care, honestly. But let's do it. I'm going to pull the trigger on this right now. I want to jump in. Got some stuff I want to make happen. So I'm going to click that intro button right now. All right. What's up, everybody? Sometimes when I get the show together, I'm like rushing to get it together, and then I rush and I pull the trigger, and then I'm like, just gotta take a second and be like, all right, we're doing it. It reminds me, I used to do a lot of like, sometimes I mention this, but I used to do all like public speaking stuff, and sometimes like, if I pulled up late in the car and like I run out of the car and like I run and I would like get on stage, I could like feel the energy of, the car and getting ready and showering and getting there. But if I took a second and I just like paused, I could kind of feel myself transition over into the mindset I need to be in. So it's kind of funny like playing with that a little bit. Anyway, though, let's do it. Got a lot of stuff I want to show you guys right now. I just want to get to painting, honestly. So let's just cut to the chase. If it's your first time here, I always forget some people's first time here. If it's your first time here, by the way, intro music, painting show. Band's called Painted Worlds, painting show, Painted Worlds. We didn't coordinate that, but it's kind of a convenient coincidence. Check it out, Bandcamp, Spotify. Doesn't make me make the plug every time, but he's a cool guy, so I thought I'd make the plug. Anyway, speaking of that, if it's your first time here, normally I have like kind of a topic set up, some things I want to talk about. I do look at the chat, so if you want me to see your chat, you have to put @Owen Cyclops like Pylos just did a few messages ago. Otherwise, I'm not going to see it. And we kind of naturally transition from me talking about what I want to talk about, getting the picture going, to, then I am able to poke into the chat more as the show moves on. Anyway, though, with that being said, let's just jump right into it. Maybe I like to plug kind of a strange book at the beginning of the show. I like to just pull a book off the shelf. Find it's a good little 1-minute intro for the show. And I was looking at my shelf and I thought, it's a very strange piece of American esoterica that I've never talked about, ever, because it's part of my old life, you could say. But I have this book. It's a pretty cool book, actually. It's called Freight Train Graffiti. And probably seems pretty random, but it's a pretty fat book, too, actually. You can see it's not a thin book at all. And it's this book that's all about I suppose you can call it the tradition of painting freight trains. If you live near the coast, you might have not seen lots of freight trains before, but when you get out in other places, that was the case for me, maybe they are there, but there's like a sort of underground American tradition of like sneaking into freight yards and painting graffiti on freight trains. And it's kind of funny because, you know, we're kind of like a upstanding, wholesome crew in a way. Like, I'm not really about like activities like this, which I guess you would probably call degenerate. But graffiti was a big part of how I got into art. And when I was younger, man, I just thought this was so cool. Just the idea of like going out and like, you know, painting something on these cars that then go across like the whole country. I just thought it was so awesome, man. I never did it, but I thought it was really cool. And this idea of like putting your name out there and it kind of anonymously like traveling throughout the country, I feel like just in general, with graffiti in general also, it must have influenced my conception of art. And it's kind of funny because now I have this, you know, anonymous persona where I put art out through this medium that is the internet instead of on like walls or like on trains and stuff. So I can't help but feel like it must have influenced me in some way. Whenever I go on a road trip, whenever we pass these freight yards, I'm always like looking out the window, like looking at the graffiti and stuff. But what does this have to do with the show tonight? Literally, absolutely nothing. Not a single thing, but I thought it kind of related to our theme of esoteric American stuff. It started out with like these hobos like drawing on like trains with chalk and stuff, but perhaps this is a tale for another time, another lifetime. This must have been like 10 years ago, actually. Way more than that for me, actually. Anyway, though, let's keep it moving. Kind of a cool book, though. See, what world is this from? It's like weird, like archaic future America dystopian. Anyway, that's the weird book of the night. But what are we really here for? What are we going to talk about? Well, I have some pictures I want to show you guys. What we're going to be talking about tonight. So if you were here last week, we were talking about King David. We did this picture. It actually turned out really awesome, of the prophet Nathan, who plays into King David's story, just because I want people to have a kind of cohesive setting. Personally, I mentioned this last week, so we'll just like 30-second recap, but I kind of hate that feeling that I had for a really long time where people are talking about the Bible and they'll be talking about some specific event or character and like secretly you don't actually really know how it fits into the whole story, so you're kind of just nodding along like, yeah, totally, yeah, definitely. But you don't actually have it put into a cohesive framework. So since we're dropping into a part, just to be totally clear, a little 30 seconds, Old Testament, Genesis, Garden of Eden, got kicked out. Then they're in Egypt, Exodus, they get kicked out of there too. Then we were in the book of Numbers. We did a bunch of episodes about that, maybe like 2. And they're going to the promised land. And then right before they get there, they give a speech. Moses gives a speech. It's Deuteronomy. And then they get to the promised land, but it's not really going that great, actually. And there's a few things that happen. You know, there's judges, right? All these leaders, and it's not really going so well. And then finally we get the kings. And that's where we are right now in the story where we're dropping into. That's like the comically condensed, probably inaccurate version. And we're dropping right into sort of like around the King David situation. So there was Saul. He was doing pretty well, went a little crazy, and then David came up after him, and that's where we're kind of dropping into the story right now. So I was planning the show, as I do every Tuesday. I wake up and I say, all right, well, how's this going to go down? Sometimes I have an idea, sometimes I don't. And I was going through, and I kind of like to hit a little node of visual, theological, biblical information. So I was like, all right, we did King David last week. That was dope. Let's do something around there. And I was looking around, and I was like, Saul, David is, playing into Saul's story. There's all these cool scenes and stuff. And I was like, I don't know, I couldn't really tell what we were going to do. And then I just saw this little detail in one of my books. I was just flipping through, and I saw it, and I said, yes, that's perfect. That's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm actually going to switch over to my desktop really quick. I'm always worried I'm going to dox myself or something, but there's no identifying info anywhere here. So we're going to come over here. You're getting the Mandelbrot fractal zoom really quick. And I'm just going to pull up the show files. Didn't anticipate this bar on the left, but it's okay. Perfect. Okay. So there's this motif. Let's start out right here. And I'm just going to quickly look at my phone. Perfect. Just to make sure it worked. Oh, we can go back and forth. It's perfect. Let's start here. This is a good place to start. Actually, let's start here. This is kind of a simplified one, I guess. So I saw this motif. I'll zoom in. I know if you're watching on a phone or something, it looks like really, really small, and you're like, what the heck am I looking at right now? But I'll tell you, don't worry. There's this motif called the Tree of Jesse, and I thought this would be a really cool motif for us to hit for the show tonight. So that's what we're going to do right now. And in case you don't know, you have no idea, it's kind of a lesser known Christian art motif, but it's pretty awesome, and I have some really cool pics here I'm going to show you right now. Basically what it is there's this passage in Isaiah. I wrote it down. It is in Isaiah 11:1, And the quote is, "And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots." So what you get is these pictures where you have Jesse at the bottom. Jesse is King David's dad. I'm going to scroll down here. Some of these pictures will be more clear, but I'm going to zoom in a lot. Some people are watching on their phones probably. So you can see this laying down man here. And then there's this rod, this tree that comes up out of him. And then depending on the amount of space the artists have, or how they want to do it, there's some lineage going up that leads to Jesus up at the top. So normally what you're always going to get is Mary in the middle. You can see this woman in the middle, right, obviously. And then we have Jesus up at the top. In this one, so this artist, probably because of the space or how they wanted to use the space, which is something we're going to have to figure out for our picture in a minute, you can see these branches kind of coming off, and you get these prophets or different figures. Here we have some scenes from Mary's life. Like, I'm just assuming right now. I actually don't know for certain. I'm just guessing. This is probably like the Visitation or something like that. All these different figures around. You got the 4 evangelists over here in the corner. So basically it's this tree that's a visual way of showing Jesus' lineage. This is the earliest one that anyone can find, where you can see it's actually not even showing Jesus' lineage. It's just Jesse at the bottom, who just once again is King David's dad. And there's this tree coming out of him, and then this person at the top. Maybe this is Jesus. I actually don't really know, honestly. This is from Bohemia, so pretty far east, but you get it in England. You get it all over the Christian world. And what does this have to do with King David? Well, oh man, I can't scroll to the right anymore. Hold on one second. Cool. Well, some people watching probably know, some people don't, but the lineage of Jesus and how he plays into the house of David and what his blood lineage is kind of a big part of the whole Christian story. In 2 of the Gospels, I think it's, I didn't prep this part, but I think it's Matthew and Luke. They start out with the genealogy of Christ, one counting forward, one counting backwards, and it basically plays into him being this prophesied figure that would be like the ultimate king, basically, as you may know. So here, this is the most general setup. This is probably what we're going to use for our picture right here, where we have Jesse at the bottom, and then you get King David, then you get King Solomon. That's King David's kid. So you got David over here, you got Solomon on top of him, and then you get Mary, and then on the top you get Jesus. We're working in kind of a rectangular format, so I don't know how much we're going to fit or what we're going to do, but we'll make it work. And then you have all these figures coming off to the side here. I'm just going to make sure you guys can see and the chat isn't full of people being like, yo, I can't read this. Okay, cool. No one is saying they can't read this. Perfect. Okay, not read it, but can't see it or something. Okay, so let's look at a few, just because some people have probably never seen this motif before. So you get it pretty often in illuminated manuscript stuff, like what we're seeing right here. But this stained glass window is pretty insane. Obviously, there's no way we can see all the details here, but it is showing Jesus' lineage also. And it's kind of cool. I pulled up this detail at the bottom, where Jesse is sleeping at the bottom, and you can see this tree coming right out of him. Thought that was kind of cool. Same deal, just this kind of vertical tree motif where we have Solomon, and then Mary, and then Jesus at the top, showing again the lineage. This is just a cool detail, but I thought it kind of fit my art style in a weird way. There's this faceless king figure, and there's something about these big chunky lines and the fact that this figure has no face up here that I felt just really fit the vibe. I don't know, maybe we'll use something like this, but even if we don't, I just thought it was kind of cool. I got a few more pictures. You get it in architecture and stuff like that. This I thought was kind of cool because this is coming up in the center of this tree, and then you got these people, and they're kind of sitting in these, I know that they're not lotus flowers, but having an Eastern art background, they really do look like lotus flowers. This really reminds me of something I would see in an Eastern picture, so I thought that was really cool. Just these torsos, these busts sitting in these, I don't know what kind of flowers they're supposed to be. Probably roses, actually. Maybe we'll paint something like that. And then sometimes you get the Theotokos at the top. You get Mary holding Jesus instead of Mary as her own layer, and then Jesus is the next layer. Let's look at a few more of these and we'll get it going. This is a tiny one. This is actually a comb, but here you can see the same idea. We got Jesse down at the bottom, and then here it just cuts right to Mary, and then she's holding little baby Jesus up at the top. It's pretty awesome. You also often see these 7 birds. I'm pretty sure this is a reference to the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit that Paul talks about. So you can see these 7 birds perched around Jesus. And then it's kind of cool because in art, when you have to deal with an odd number as an artist, it's actually kind of difficult. If it was 6, it would be pretty easy. So oftentimes the artist will put the dove up at the top. Sometimes he's grabbing Jesus's halo and stuff to make it 7, 3 on each side, and then 1 more makes 7. Let's keep it moving. I think I have like a few more pictures. This is kind of a simplified one. I think we'll probably try and get into this like manuscript-y style. You know, it kind of perfectly fits, you know, the aesthetic that we already painted normally. So I thought we'd just look at this really quick. Maybe we'll do something like that. Keep it moving. Hold on, I have to reopen it for some reason. Okay. This is kind of cool. Of course, you know, Renaissance and realistic artists. This is actually way later than the Renaissance. I'm pretty sure this is from the 1800s. But you can see this vine that's growing from between the person to the next person to the next person coming up, and then Jesus is holding this like blooming flower at the end. It's a really low resolution picture, but I just thought I'd quickly show it. It's kind of cool. Of course, like the more realistic artists have to take like a different vibe on it. This is from some church, but it's kind of cool seeing it like in this architectural style over here. And same deal, Jesse, David, Solomon, Mary, and then we have Jesus at the top. All right, let's blow through the rest of these pictures because I want to get painting. This is kind of cool. I couldn't find a more high resolution image of this. I'm sure it exists, but you know, I was kind of rushing before the show, honestly. But here it's radial. Radial as in emanating from the center instead of bottom to top. So here Jesse is in the center, and then all the descendants are coming out from the outside. I thought that was pretty awesome. Sometimes it's little architectural details. This is from Britain, but just, you know, you're walking into a church, you would probably never even like look at something like this on the side, but this motif like comes up in situations like that. It's often deployed in like lesser central situations. I thought this was kind of heavy metal. In some church in Spain, apparently, this whole nave, this whole like set into the back over here is this like massive tree of Jesse. It's pretty awesome. Maybe we'll get a little bit of that vibe going on. Okay, this might be the last one. Just again, like hardcore illuminated manuscript style. Something about this like informational graphic really lends itself well to that like manuscript-y, everything's flat but kind of 3D painting format. So I thought that was good. And look at this. I mean, I'm trying to blow through the pictures, but look how cool this is. I mean, come on. This rules. Here we have, I guess this is kind of like a play on it, or maybe it's not even related at all, but you have Jesus up here in the top left, and he's literally drawing out the descendants up, boom, from this like dragon's mouth at the bottom. Dude, we probably have to do a show like just on this one. Look how chill that is. Oh, dude, I'm so down. This has that kind of like Christian esoterica flavor I'm often going for, in case you're just meeting me for the first time. And this is the last one. Same deal, but I just wanted to show you guys as many as possible, as many examples as possible. Here it's even like more ambiguous. Jesse's just holding the tree at the bottom, but so you can see it's a motif. I'm going to reopen little OBS window, and we're back. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, cool. So we did it. Let's make sure. Cool. I'm always paranoid whenever I cut away that I'm going to come back to the chat and there's going to be like 100 messages like, we can't hear you, or something. But we're good. Okay, I'm just looking. Cool. All right, so let's do this. So I'm just going to section this off and then we can just get it going right now. Here's the interesting thing. Like I said, you know, we normally start straight with the picture and then branch out. Nice. Perfect pun for the show. Into a variety of other topics, but starting with the image, one interesting thing for us is going to be that we are working wider. We're working wider than we are tall because of the format of video and YouTube videos. So that should actually be kind of interesting. I don't know exactly how we're going to handle that. I had some ideas. Let me just make sure this is straight before I draw this line. Cool. Last time I made it really not straight. Not that it's a big deal at all. So I don't know exactly how we're going to handle that. Maybe we'll have the tree kind of like branching off to the side and stuff like that. But that'll just be an interesting picture thing. Otherwise, color scheme, if we're pumping that illuminated manuscript feel, then getting some of those chalky, almost like dusty colors is going to be a big part of that. What else are we thinking about setting out? That's really it, honestly. I want to see how many verticals we can fit, too. I mean, obviously we're going to use David and Solomon, but then maybe we'll just go with like a very simplified version of Mary holding Jesus at the top. Well, let's see. I'm going to draw this last line over here. Someone said it looks like my art style is Isidore. Lotuses existed in the Near East and around Egypt. The lotus eaters ate blue water lilies. Yeah, that's true, actually. So they did have them in the West as well. Fact check, true. Okay, perfect. Although the only lotuses I've really seen in Christian art that are true, like 100% lotuses, are in Eastern Christian art, like in the Nestorian churches and stuff. If you don't know about that, we can talk about that later, everybody. Okay. Let's do it. How do we want to start? Well, if you have never seen the show before... Oh, I got to grab my paints. That's the one thing I'm forgetting. One sec. All right. And I also thought this would be a cool theme because it kind of relates to like, a lot of stuff I've been thinking about recently. Like, you know, genealogy. You know, it's interesting that, like, you know, it's conditional. Not really conditional. It's probably the wrong word to use. But that it's related to Jesus's coming, that he has to be part of this, you know, genealogical lineage. I find that kind of interesting. Kind of makes me think about like my own genealogical lineage, honestly, not to make that parallel. Power, obviously, it's kind of probably been on everybody's mind to some extent recently, but we'll get into all that. But to get it going, if you have watched the show before, you know the first call we have to make. You can hear the hesitating in my voice. Normally, I'm so confident. The first call we have to make is what color we're starting with the lines. So we've been pumping the fall thing pretty hard, and I've been enjoying it. But let's see, let's kind of take a step away from that. Let's see if we can land in that illuminated manuscript feel. And if you don't know what the feel I'm talking about is, you probably just saw when you open up one of those images and you see those colors, something about like the reds and the greens and the pale greens and the deep blues. It just screams, I'm an illuminated manuscript from 1300s Northern Europe or something. So that's what we're going to go for, but I don't know what that really means for our lines. They're almost black. They're almost black, but I don't really want to start with the black. Could go with blue. Let's go with brown. That's a really safe bet. It's kind of neutral. Let's just go with like a nice dark brown. We're going to go with burnt umber. We're going to go with burnt umber for the lines. And then we'll bring in those illuminated manuscript colors as we go. And I've kind of been pushing the style of the people in these images. Last time we nailed it with Nathan and those guys. So let's see how we want to do this. Anything else I should say before we get it started? No, I'm kind of amped though because I want to see how much we can push the illuminated manuscript thing. As you may know, I am a huge illuminated manuscript enthusiast, and that was a big like basis for my art for a long time. Those are always the artists that I've identified the most with, honestly, throughout all of history. I mean, I'm not really, you know, it's kind of a subtle distinction, but I'm really, even though I call myself a painter, I'm not actually really a painter. I'm really an illustrator. So that means that I have more of a kinship with like the random dudes from like 800 to like 1300 AD making pictures in like big gold leafy Bibles. I have more of a kinship with them than like Renaissance oil painters and stuff, actually. Okay, so let's do it. And should I move the camera? Should I bring it down a little bit? No, let's not do that. At least not yet. So let's see. In most of the pictures, he's like sleeping, propped up on one arm. So let's see how we want to do that. I'll make him big enough because, so let's see, so we're playing with illuminated manuscript world right now. I want to make it big enough that it reads. Let's pretend this is like a page in like a book or something, you know. So he has to be like pretty big, pretty wide at the bottom. So we'll probably just make him pretty wide down here, and then we'll put boom, David, boom, Solomon, and then we'll get the Theotokos up at the top. And then honestly, we'll figure out what we want to do on the sides. If we're really pushing the illuminated manuscript thing, we could just, you know, make them flowers and flourishes and stuff. We could put like generic kind of like prophet figures in. So let's kind of try and keep this one moving. Usually in the beginning of the show, I get really bogged down in the details and I get stuck in the details, but let's try and not have that happen right now. I'm also going to bring the light over a little bit. Perfect. Bring this light over a little bit too. Perfect. Doesn't really matter if the palette's like blown out. All right. So let's see. It's always the first marks that are the most kind of like important, I guess. Let's kind of start with his hand. So let's see. We're going to make him like from here to here. And we'll kind of just throw down his hand like he's leaning on it, you know, almost like he's sleeping or something. Boom. Perfect. We'll put him in some kind of robe or something. I guess technically I should change colors for the robe, but I'm not going to get that hardcore about it right now, to be honest with you. And if I'm pushing the illuminated manuscript thing, I'm going to kind of push the like foldiness of the clothing. Cool. haven't talked about this for a while, but you know, once you've been doing art for a long time, I could very confidently do, you know, making only safe moves and stuff, and it would be perfect, but it's kind of boring for everyone, so I figured I might as well take a few risks in terms of the style, and then, you know, if it turns out whack, it turns out whack, whatever. Bring it down a little bit over here. Perfect. Cool. And let's see. I kind of just want to go for it with his face. I guess I'll give him a beard. For most of these figures, it's not really explicated what they, you know, actually look like, so. Give him the sort of broad nose coming down into a beard. Perfect. And I really enjoyed, when I was prepping for the show, give him kind of a long beard. Sort of like an honorific marker. We'll play up these kind of like folds and things as we keep going. There we go, perfect. Cool. And I really enjoyed checking out the story of the kings so far, honestly. I'm not as like deep into it as I want to be. Let's see, we'll kind of give him these long, sleepy eyes. Perfect. Is he bald? I don't know. How old is he? Let's roll with the bald thing for now. We can always change it. And other arm. You know, I'm going to make kind of a bold stylistic choice here. I'm going to have his other arm holding the trunk of this like rod that's like coming out of him. Yeah, that's perfect. And just come in with that style. That means that we just gotta like leave room for it. So I'll just put the line right there. Perfect. And then what's he wearing? Of course, if we're going medieval manuscript style and stuff, we got to. So we'll kind of just leave this blank here. We got to go with the robe if we're going full on medieval style. And let's see. We'll be behind him, so this will be perfect. And we'll give him some kind of like flowing robe coming up like this. And I really like some of that stained glass stuff where the shapes are like super simplified. So maybe I can get a little bit of that energy going on here too. His torso might be too long, but I'm cool with it. So what we're gonna do, I guess I should make it so this one leg comes up here like this. Yeah, this is perfect. And I'm gonna start, I usually don't do this, but I'm gonna put a little bit of a background in just to push him off this white frame. Just to push him off the white a little bit. Okay, and the other leg, I could make it coming up high. Yeah, that looks dope actually. Let's do that. Cool. Perfect. And what's he wearing? He's wearing boots, obviously. Some kind of boot. Perfect. Perfect. Put in the straps. Gotta put in the boot straps. Cool. Perfect. Over here, we're just gonna come down here with this, and I'm gonna bleed out some of these colors right now. I'm gonna give him a halo and stuff. I like to start on like a solid footing with all this. So let's see, I'm gonna come in with the brown for the beard. It's also interesting doing this with the camera because I guess we'll be more kind of like detail oriented here. So maybe I should even bring the camera down more, but we'll see how it goes. Perfect. Cool. That's good enough. And I'm going to shade in some of his clothes a little bit. And exactly what I said was going to happen is happening. So let's try and keep it moving and not get stuck in the details. I'm just going to shade it in a little bit here. Cool. And same thing with the pants. Since his shirt is touching the beard, we can't really deploy like the hardcore brown on the shirt. We'll probably just drop another color in there. But for the pants, we can. We can just come in and shade these out. Cool. Maybe we'll even put him like on kind of like a hill or something. He kind of is like a little hill in the sense that this tree is like growing out of him. Perfect. While I was researching this, I also found a lot of cool other stuff like. Perfect. I was reading about the flowers they like normally use in this kind of thing. This is a good look. Cool. And I was reading about this tradition of the popes, like giving out this like golden rose and giving people this like a literal like golden rose as a mark of like loyalty to the papacy and stuff. And people were putting like the golden rose like in the pictures. It's pretty cool actually. Okay. I want to see how light I can get the shirt. So I'm just going to come back now that it's dry. Perfect. I'm just kind of shade in here. Probably could have made this back arm over here a little lighter, but it's okay. Kind of like draws attention to it in a nice way. Okay, as long as we're down here, I'm just gonna throw on a halo of some kind. Let's see. I'm learning to refocus the camera, so just stick with me for literally like 1 second. Perfect. So I'm going to throw on a halo. Let's just go with the really warm... Actually, wait, we're going manuscript style. I'm going to go with the cold yellow. So this is lemon yellow as opposed to the school bus yellow, the cadmium yellow. So we'll throw this down. We might need to cut it a little bit with the cadmium yellow. And I feel like something about the halo style or the style of the background, or maybe it'll just be the deep blues, is going to let us get that manuscript flavor that we're looking for. I was also, I was kind of like read a lot of stuff about what I'm going to be painting and stuff, just see if any jogs any interesting thoughts. And one thing I thought was really cool is I was reading something that talked about David, King David, as kind of this pivotal figure. Pivotal as in like the literal sense of the word, like pivoting. And he being like this pivot point between Adam and Jesus, and I thought that was kind of cool also. I like markers in like a history where it's like, oh, this guy is like between these two other people. And I thought that was kind of interesting. It kind of is where he falls in the story in a way. It's not like literally halfway, but okay, so we're going to come in with this halo. Perfect. And I want to throw down a hill behind him. Let's just do it. And hill color for illuminated manuscript world is definitely sap green, obviously. So we'll throw down this green hill, and then we'll kind of zoom out. Since we're doing the whole thing in one go, I guess we really should make sure we don't. I don't want to make this one part like crazy detailed and then spend like 5 hours painting everything else, which obviously we're not going to do. So I'm just going to throw down this green hill behind him. And I think also what will give it that medieval flavor is the plants. Medieval artists love putting these tiny little sprouty plants coming out of everything. So that's what we're going to do right behind him. And we'll work in that kind of pale green color. I don't know what it is about the pigments they were using or whatever, but they always get this kind of like pale green color that to me really just screams like illuminated manuscript. And some of them, like in Ireland and stuff, it's always cool seeing like how different cultures got their like different pigments. In Ireland, I think there's some kind of like berry or something. They would literally have to go out and like find this berry and like crush it up to make their green paint. There's not that many green pigments anyway to begin with, so okay, cool. And let's see. So zoom out a little bit. So mixing colors world, we want that, it's almost like a cool green. So we're talking about the temperature of the colors now. It's almost like a cool green. So I'm wondering, the thing is the Viridian. So I have two green pigments that I really use, sap green and Viridian. For every color, in case you're not familiar, for every color, there's going to be like a warm version and a cool version within my palette. That's kind of like how I set it up. So this green is the warm green. This Viridian is going to be way too cool. If we mix this with white, and the white also has a cooling effect, I just want you to have like a window into like thinking about mixing colors. The white makes the colors cooler. So as we mix white in, it's going to add like an icy flavor to them. It's going to like literally ice them up. You'll be able to see it, like make it really cool. I think my camera's tilted. There we go, perfect. Perfect. So I think this is going to be too cool. Let's try the sap green with the white and see if that gives us the color that we're looking for. Boom. Let me zoom out a little bit more. Perfect. Someone asked me, reminds me of Mr. Natural by Robert Crumb. I haven't really looked at too much of R. Crumb's work. I know he illustrated Genesis, actually. But I haven't looked at too much of it. It has that like old school comic style, which like I don't exactly vibe with. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just not my vibe. Okay, so we're gonna take the white. Can you guys see what I'm doing? Yeah, you can. So we'll take the white, and let's see what color we get over here. We gotta make that way more green. Yeah, this is kind of exactly the color I was thinking of. So the other thing is, normally, for a long time actually, we haven't really been mixing colors. We've just been using the white of the page as like a modifier and putting the colors down more opaque, less opaque, more transparent, less transparent. But if we're doing it like this color is going to dry darker than we're mixing it actually, because the binders and the glue in the paint is white. So as it dries, it becomes transparent, kind of like Elmer's glue that you used when you were a little kid. So it's going to dry darker than this. So I think this might be a good color. Let's just commit and go for it. And I'm not even going to bring it up that high because we're going to have to put the next figure right underneath it, right? Perfect. So we'll just kind of cut it off right there. We'll probably put some like rose petal-y thing in and then have David sitting in there. David's the next one. So it's Jesse, David, Solomon, and then Mary, skipping forward a pretty long way there at the end, but that's how it goes. Yeah, that's perfect actually. You know, actually, it's kind of nice we have the opaque paint. I'm just going to come down more. I want this coming out of him, like out of his chest. Yeah, and I'm going to darken up the bottom actually. It's not dark enough. So I'm going to come over here. And let's see. I should wait till it dries, but you know, we're kind of going swiftly here, so it'll be fine. I'll let it dry like that, and then however we want to do it, we can come back and fix it up, and I'll kind of adjust this line or something. We'll see how we want to have it coming out of his chest. Most of the paintings had like some skillfully placed robe or something like that right there, but I thought it would be cooler if we just made it like straight up protruding right out of his chest. It's kind of more my style, obviously. Okay, and let's throw down this next flower right above. I'm kind of torn because I hyped up making it illuminated manuscript style so much, but that's going to entail curbing the colors. If I really wanted to read like that, I should add some white or something to this red, but you know, my instinct is just to go full blast on the color. It actually pains me to not give you guys the full 100% fattest color situation possible, but let's try it a little bit. We're trying new things here. So I'm going to throw down a little bit of this red. I'm going to mix a little bit of white in. What I'm planning to do is that we'll mix the white in here on the red. We'll kind of chalk up the red. Chalk, like, you know, make it like chalky and a little bit whiter. Yeah, it's going to give us a little bit of that manuscript flavor. And then I'll come back in with the pure red and do the lines in that. I think that would be kind of like a dope look. Okay. So I'm just going to wet this a little bit. And this should be kind of a cool motif moment because I actually don't know exactly how I'm going to do this. I'm just going to go for it. So a lot of times, actually I'll show you guys what I'm thinking. I'm going to grab a piece of paper over here. So a lot of times when I'm working in a certain, oh, this is perfect actually, wow. A certain style, if I was doing like a straight up lotus flower, honestly, which is something I used to do a lot, I would do it like this. You can have one big petal in the front, and then from that, you're able to kind of have these other petals coming out like this, and you can kind of start to tuck them behind each other. So I'm just going to quickly do this, but it's kind of worth explicating. 1, 2, 3. You need one more over here. And then you kind of get this nice little surface, and then you can put like a little, whoever it is, in the middle. You can come back and put the petals in the back. It's kind of a classic kind of like setup over there. But if we want to do it rose style, let's see how that would look. We can kind of just come out with the rose petal that has that like cut in it. The problem is rose petals aren't as like cool of a shape as these like tucky ones over here. Maybe we can make it work. Actually, this looks kind of dope. I think we're gonna do it this way. Yeah, we're gonna do it this way. And then we'll kind of just come up with like a, I forget what the body halos are called, but we'll kind of just come up with the body halo, and then we'll have, he's not fat, but it's fine. Guy in the middle, perfect. Yeah, whoever it is on the Lotus looks like a rubber ducky. Yeah, it kind of does. All right. We should just do like I should do that one time for an episode, just like draw as quickly as possible and get like as much out as possible in like a really simple style. Anyway, though, not today. Let's throw down this rose throne situation. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline it in this color. I'm going to fill it in, and then we'll outline it in the red later. And I'm going to go quickly because I said I didn't want to get stuck in the details, and I can feel it kind of happening already. Let's just go quickly here. So yeah, I don't know. I thought it was interesting, you know. It's kind of like when I'm prepping this stuff. Sometimes I have like, oh my god, I got to go over like X, Y, and Z topic 100%. Oh, also what you can do, I'm not going to do it right now because I want to keep moving, but sometimes you get kind of a cool effect if you mix a little bit of white in or another color in for each petal, and then you get kind of a cool fade as it goes to the back. Maybe I'll do that for the next one. I'll do that for the King Solomon petal. But yeah, I don't know. There's just something interesting, you know, whenever I'm thinking about like theological and mystical symbolism and stuff, and you know how things are, especially for something like this. It's kind of interesting because, like, you know, there's really no reason why anything has to be the way it is in terms of, you know, God making things happen. You know, God's not constrained by like any like external rules or anything. It's not like, you know, it's not like he had to have, you know, Jesus come from this like particular genealogical lineage or anything. He could have done whatever he wanted, right? So I always think about that, and I was thinking about that this week, you know, especially because I was thinking about King David and how he's like the ancestor of Christ and stuff. And I don't know, I don't really have like a big like macro takeaway, but I do think it's like interesting. It kind of makes me reflect on my own life in a way, because, you know, everyone has their own kind of like genealogical lineage, right? And sometimes it feels incidental, doesn't it? I mean, for me, I don't know how it feels for you. This looks like kind of a mess, but when I go back and outline the petals, it'll look dope. Sometimes I feel like it has nothing to do with me, honestly. I mean, maybe it's because I'm like modern guy, like, unfortunately, like untethered from it. But sometimes I feel like it's totally incidental and like it has literally nothing to do with me, honestly. But then other times I feel like it's like the defining feature of like who I am. So it's just interesting that when God had this physical incarnation on earth, you know, it also sort of like was a condition on that incarnation that he come from this like particular family, basically. I mean, a genealogy is basically just like an extended family. Okay, so I'm going to throw down Solomon. I'm kind of torn about how I want to do it, because that bust style where it's just the head, sorry, just the chest, shoulders, I guess that just made the decision. The chest, shoulders, and head coming out, that was pretty dope, and I kind of feel like I should make use of that, so let's just go for it. Whatever this line is, I can paint over it. It's fine. So I'm just going to throw down the shoulders. Should we give him a beard, King David? He's got to have a beard, right? I mean, come on. What are we talking about? And for these faces, I kind of just want them to look generic. I'm not really worried about like imparting like a particular like personality onto them. So I want to go for that like 800 AD manuscript look where it's like everyone kind of looks the same anyway. Perfect. You know, we'll take that for sure. Come in here with the neck. And we'll just give him kind of like a light beard. Man, what is it about the King David paintings in the freaking show? They always come out kind of weird. It's fine though. Come down over here. We'll give him sort of like a king's robe. I'm just going to fill in the beard right off the bat because I don't want to look at this weird like shape that I put on his face. Okay. Cool. Just going to put in the beard. Yeah, that's way better. Perfect. Just going to throw in the hair. Perfect. And I'm going to come down and throw in, boom, these lines. 1, 2, like he's wearing one of those king's robes. Perfect. Perfect. And I'm going to throw down the halo, and then I want to get this blue back in because I think that that is what's going to give us the manuscript vibe. I'm really counting on that. So yeah, otherwise, otherwise, I don't know. All this stuff kind of also dovetails with a lot of what I've been thinking about, which is like power and authority. We talked about it a little bit last week. But this week I was kind of thinking about it again, and I don't know, I think it's kind of interesting that like the whole Old Testament has all these like powerful individuals who then, I don't know, I don't want to say they like mess it up, but they're like imperfect people naturally, you know? And when I think about the power structures we have, and, you know, I'm always kind of thinking about like, you know, spiritual authority and all that stuff. It's just interesting, you know, I feel like we live in this like fallen world, and like I'm always kind of thinking about like ideal power structures, you know, like, and I feel like it kind of dovetails with politics, because so much of politics is like, well, you know, what's the ideal power structure here? You know, like what would this be ideally? And that was kind of like one of my first big like breaks with like a lot of political stuff, I guess you could say, because, you know, like I'd be talking to people. This is going to bleed out a little bit because the paint is still wet, but it's all good. You know, I'd be like talking to people and they'd say, you know, let's say they're like, I'm an anarchist, you know. Well, you get two like very different kinds of people in that folder. People that would say they're an anarchist. You get people who are like, well, yeah, ideally, in some ideal perfect world, yeah, there would be no government and no one would be like telling anyone else what to do. But then those people in that folder, you know, still make like realistic like political decisions and stuff. Realistic, let's say, like coming to terms with like the reality of like the world around them. Or you get people who are like, yeah, I'm an anarchist and I want to just like smash buildings and like literally tear like everything down around me. And I think we should have anarchy like right now, like tomorrow, like if possible, you know? And I started to realize that like, that's just a crude example. I'm not like talking shit if anyone is like an anarchist, you know? But I started to realize that there was a big gap between people who were kind of like planning out their politics, you could say, like adopting like a political position based on some kind of, you know, ideal. Like if you created the world and everything was totally perfect, how would things be ideally? Versus people who are like, well, tomorrow we have to make like X, Y, and Z political decisions. What's the best call about this within the confines of our like particular situation, you know? And I don't know, there's just something about that. Like, I feel like more and more, like, you know, I met some people the other day. I went to this kind of, like, dinner party, I guess. And we got to talking about politics, you know. People don't normally ask, like, you know, what's your political views, you know? Like, what position are you in, you know? But they kind of do. They kind of do, like, feel you out naturally. There's nothing wrong with it if you're meeting them for the first time. And, like, more and more, I just feel like, you know, I do have, like, really strong opinions, obviously. But I also feel like it's kind of like, because it's so situational, it's almost like it doesn't fit into some like idealized conception of it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to come up with this kind of like petal shape where it almost comes up and tapers up here. But I don't know if I'm going to have room for one more figure and then another figure. So I'm going to compromise with reality, speaking of what we're just talking about right now. And I'm going to get the blue dome kind of thing that I'm painting in to come around like that. Yeah, that's perfect, actually. That's perfect. Cool. I feel like the lighting is like unideal. Honestly, hold up just 1 second. Just give me literally 1 second. I hate doing this live, but I'm just going to quickly pump up the lighting really quick. I just feel like it's dark, don't you? Okay, perfect. Cool. We went so far into season 2 without me having to do any corrections live, but okay, that's better. I'm going to come back in here. Close. Perfect. Perfect. Sorry, normally I have the exposure set to 6, set to 5, it was set to 6, in case anyone cares. Anyway, though, and I also just feel like, I don't know, so much of, like, people discussing different, you know, theological things sometimes boils down to, like, who should have authority here and all that stuff, and I kind of just feel like, what if we're in this, like, fallen world and these, like, systems just kind of, like, corrupt over time naturally, you know, and, like, what are the implications of that within, like, different systems? I don't know. I just kind of hate that I'm forced to. I don't hate it. I mean, I love it, honestly. It's actually great. Like, think about, like, you know, who has power over me and all this stuff, you know, especially because my theological and spiritual views used to be kind of just like, it's almost like I used to be like a spiritual anarchist in a way. I kind of used to be like, yeah, well, you know, everyone just can figure it out on their own. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to listen to anyone else tell me what to do, you know, but eventually you kind of bottom out with that. You know, reading like every weird book you can and every fringe crazy person you can. Eventually you're like, all right, some people have spiritual authority and some people don't. So it's kind of interesting. I kind of used to be like a spiritual anarchist in a way. But now I'm like a spiritual monarchist. It's kind of a funny transition to make, actually. Okay, as suspected, the blue definitely punched it up quite a bit. And I really like that dome. I like this kind of dome. I think we should actually put Jesse like under a dome also. Dog hair right here. Perfect. So we're going to put Jesse under a dome also. And I don't know, there's just something so fruitful, or maybe it's just the reality of the situation, like where these kind of like ideals have to meet with reality, and that relates to like religion and politics and everything. I don't know, it's almost like I just feel like there's kind of like work to be done there or something in a way, you know? So we're going to put Jesse under this kind of like blue dome also. Perfect. And this color is cobalt blue. I guess I could have used ultramarine, but I just thought it wouldn't look as good, honestly. I like this like bright blue. I actually call this like Virgin Mary blue when I'm working with it. And this dome, it's not exactly, you know, a perfect half circle, but whatever. And before all the political stuff went down, my main sort of like topic of research in my few minutes free every day, which I really don't get, was like history of the papacy. And I feel like that is something that's very fascinating to me. And again, it's like this blend of like power, temporal power, and spiritual authority and everything. And then you get the whole sort of structure of the church, obviously, which is also something I'm very fascinated by. So I don't know, it's kind of like that Rilke poem. I mentioned this Rilke poem a lot, but he has a poem where he says he's like an eagle circling this tower, you know, but what is the tower? And his circles get, you know, first they're big and then they get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, and it gets closer and closer circling, but what is he circling? You know, what is it? And that's kind of like how I feel sometimes, you know. It's like, oh, I'm reading about, you know, the papacy in the 1300s. Now I'm obsessed with, you know, my own country's like political situation. Now I'm wondering, you know, what do I think about this king in the Bible? And it's almost like, in a weird way, it kind of becomes like one topic, you know? Not really in a way that I could explicate, but all the different things I'm reading and researching always kind of play out that way. They always kind of like fit into each other. Actually, literally right before the whole election went down, I was literally reading about like the papal schism, which is just like profoundly hilarious to me. I didn't even like make the connection when I was doing it. But I literally posted some meme about like Celestine V like the day before the election, because like that's what I was reading about. And then after the election, I was like, oh, interesting. I wonder if I like subconsciously started reading about, you know, this time where like multiple people were all vying for like a legitimate claim to authority. Perfect. I guess also it's kind of like unrelated, but I mean, it's like related in a weird way, but while I am laying down this blue, let's see, anyone call me out in the chat? No. What do I think of blue being the color of the ancients? You didn't tag me, but I saw it, so I'm going to answer you. In what sense? In what sense? I mean, everyone loves the color blue for sure. It's always kind of been like a royal color. I really think of like purple as the ancient royal color, although you didn't say royalty, you just said color of the ancients. Let's see, coming down. Honestly, I really do feel like all the colors, I mean, this is pretty obvious, especially if you watch the show, but all the colors, they're like spiritual character, and they're mental character, like the way you react to them mentally. I mean, art historians always like to hype up how like culturally relative it is and stuff, but like honestly, it's not. It's literally just not. The way you react to colors is partially spiritual and partially biological, and honestly, neither of those two things are that culturally conditioned. Like, yeah, you can break out certain things like, oh, you know, 120 years ago, like pink was the boy color. Like, okay, yeah, sure, that's true. That is true, actually, in case you didn't know that. Anybody. But other stuff like, you know, blue having this like deep royal quality to it, it's not culturally conditioned. I think it actually like has that feeling to it for sure, and people can sense that. That's just my opinion. Like red, you know, think about the color red. Your body is like so conditioned to like when it sees blood, when it sees food that's red, when it sees meat that's red. So like, it's not exactly what you asked me, but like whenever I fish back like, you know, 3,000, 5,000 years ago and try and like put myself in their head like artistically, honestly, over time, I've kind of concluded that it's really not that different. Sometimes art historians are so stupid, honestly. When I was reading about the Tree of Jesse stuff, actually, it's so funny because, you know, they go back and yeah, this blue dome, that looks dope, man. I'm going to throw down some stars on here too, by the way. It's not pink, it's salmon. Yeah, true. So salmon shorts are trad. Yeah, I actually have salmon shorts, dude. I have pants that are that color too, and yeah, they look dope. Women like when you wear stuff like that. I don't usually give relationship advice, but it's true. Okay, let's just keep this kind of simplified situation moving up. We're doing pretty well on time, but I want to have enough time to branch out, get some more interesting stuff going on. Not that this isn't interesting, but we're going to up the pace a little bit. It always happens around 7:45, 8 o'clock, so we're going to up the pace a little bit. But yeah, I was researching this, the tree of Jesse, and I was reading this article about it, And what art historians do is they'll find the oldest thing they can find of something, and then they'll be like, oh, so this is where it started. And then they'll kind of like reason out from there, and it's just like, bro, definitely not. Like the oldest tree of Jesse they could find was like 1000 AD. I think it was in Bohemia. I might have mentioned that in the intro. I think I did actually. But then they're like, yeah, so this article I was reading was like, yeah, this is probably the first one, But then you see them like 100 years later, maybe less, in England and stuff like that, and it's like, well, dude, obviously it's not the first one. Duh. And it was saying like, oh, it was sort of extrapolating out of it like, this idea of like, oh, damn, I can't do the red outline because I just put down that green. Should I just do it anyway? No, I'm not going to be stupid. They can never appeal to like the human element. Like they were even saying like, oh, this idea of like laying it out as a tree, information as a tree in general must come from people seeing this tree of Jesse thing, But they can't turn the reasoning around and be like, well, maybe it's just a cool way to like show information that's actually like kind of intuitive. It always has to be like some like direct informational lineage thing they can like point to. It's impossible that it's just like a natural thing. Like humans see trees and stuff in nature. It kind of naturally is like, oh, this comes from this, and then they use that as like a way of like delineating information. I mean, there's pictures in like Tibet. Again, that's just kind of like where I have a little bit more artistic background than other random places. But there's pictures in Tibet where they use the tree. It's called like a refuge tree, and it's a tree where it has all the teachers like coming up into this big tree, and the tree is full of like all the deities and stuff like that. It's probably just a natural human inclination to like see a tree full of fruit. It starts from the roots and goes up into the tree, and you're like, oh, hey, it's a perfect metaphor for like how I came from my grandparents or how my teacher taught me, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we can talk about how stupid academics are again in a second. Big call right now. I have a second lotus. It's not a lotus, it's a rose. Talking about Tibetan Buddhism. A second rose over here. Do I make it red also? I kind of want to keep it visually interesting. I'm letting you into my brain right now. I would make it orange, but there's not really orange roses, so I'm not going to do that. I could make it yellow, and then I could make his halo a darker yellow, but then you're going to have the yellow and yellow right next to each other. I'm kind of torn. Right now, and I got to make a call. Let's make it kind of a gold color. We'll go in that direction. Like a gold rose. I didn't read too much into it. It was something cool I found before the show, but I didn't go too hard into it. But yeah, I was looking at this Catholic encyclopedia from a really long time ago, and it was talking about, I just happened to connect from Tree of Jesse to this other entry, and it said the golden rose, and it was talking all about, like I said before, this literal golden rose that the popes used to like give out or something, but I didn't go too hard into it. But we'll use a golden rose right now in reference to that. So I'll just kind of mix up this darker, kind of like brassy gold yellow color, and that's how we'll paint in the rose here. Cool. I guess the colors used in churches, not a lot of neon yellow, right? What looks good to us would look good to them 1,000 years ago. Yeah, dude, all this stuff, dude, honestly, academic art historians and stuff, you got to remember, most art, this is like a big part of my life because I happen to be really into art, but I'm also not like an academic like that. I mean, I've been around those people. Like most people that do art academically, like and write about stuff and make that their career, they don't actually do art. You know what I'm saying? So like you could read 3,000 pages of painting history from someone that's literally never painted in their life. And that's not a refutation of their work in and of itself. Of course, a lot of like brilliant people have contributed like, a lot of really great stuff that way. But sometimes it does matter. Sometimes it does matter. And Yeah, you just reminded me of it because, like, you know, you kind of hinted at, like, oh, what looks good to us looks good to them. A lot of the stuff about, like, changing beauty standards and stuff, whether it's, like, literally with women or even just, like, aesthetically, it's not real, actually, dude. If you go back and look at stuff from, like, thousands of years ago, it looks cool to you and it also looked cool to them. You pretty rarely get something from a really long time ago where you look at it and you're like, wow, what were they thinking? Well, if they thought that looked good, that actually really almost never happens. Because it's appealing if it's a piece of like good art, even if it's like some folk like bed frame or some chair or something someone made, it's appealing to this like intuitive part of the human spirit that exists beyond temporary aesthetic stuff like that. There are some examples of like weird colors and stuff, but they're actually pretty cool, and it's kind of a split how to explain it. Like if anyone looks up Pontormo's Deposition, it's one of my favorite paintings of all time. I'm just cleaning my brush right now. We'll use the same brown for Solomon, and then we'll try and get Mary and Jesus up in here. We're going to move a lot faster. It always happens in the beginning of the show, but I guess it's kind of a condition of how we're going to do it. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, if anyone looks up Pontormo's Deposition. So I'm just going to put a generic king figure in here also. This is King Solomon, but like I said, I'm not worried about like having it, have some like epic personality or something. If anyone looks up Pontormo's Deposition, it has like crazy neon colors. Like the colors are almost literally like, it's almost vaporwave. It's almost like vaporwave Renaissance. Technically it's Mannerist, which is the artistic period that came after the Renaissance, but it's almost like vaporwave, how like blown out and like pink and light blue and stuff it is. So people will kind of like hype that up and like write about it from that context of like, oh, he was like really pushing the color envelope and all that stuff, but actually, the thing is, I've been there. I've been to that church in Italy where it's housed, and what someone told me is that made Solomon kind of like this wider guy. Not really for any particular reason. We'll put him in kind of like kingly robes too. What someone told me is that the reason those colors are so like blown out and intense is that Pontormo did a picture for another church, and in the same way the deposition is set into the church, it's put in this kind of like dark corner. It's literally in like a dark corner of the church. And back then, of course, there's no like artificial lighting, right? So what this guy told me was like, the reason it's painted this way with these crazy colors is because he put the first picture up and you couldn't even see it. If you imagine like dark Renaissance painting colors with the shadows and everything, if you set that into a dark corner where there's no sunlight, no one's going to be able to tell what it is. So then someone said, this guy told me, that's why he made this other picture blown out. And when you go into if you go on Wikipedia and look up the painting, you're going to see it in full blasted color because they probably put the camera flash on, or not really. They probably lit it up with artificial lighting to take a picture of it, thinking like, oh, we got to make this look good because everyone's going to see this picture. But that's, of course, not ever how he would have imagined it looking. It's kind of a little interesting color detour there. But yeah, anyway. So this halo is going to bleed out a little bit. It's all good though. We'll kind of have a gold halo naturally. Someone said, what do you think about Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling? Really puts me off for some reason. Oh, dude. Really interesting. Perfect segue, though, because the same thing happens there. If you read some articles and stuff, people will talk about like, oh, we did color analysis on the pigments used in this. I'm getting kind of this cool brown glow around his head, but it's really small, so we'll just keep it going. We did this pigment color analysis, and it turns out that... originally these colors for the Sistine Chapel were actually almost like neon and like psychedelic colors. In case you don't know, I'm not making that up. That's a real thing people talk about. But again, it's probably the same thing. Michelangelo obviously wasn't like an idiot, and he knew it would be, in this room that's often dark, so he probably blew out the colors, anticipating that it wouldn't be lit up with like spotlights and stuff. Anyway, though, what do I think about the Renaissance art stuff? Man, it's really interesting because I really love all that stuff, honestly. Some of the best art in the world ever, really, was made in Tuscany, in Italy, during and just before the Renaissance, like straight up. I mean, it's literally some of the best art in the world, hands down, no competition, highest quality. I'm not saying it's better than everything else, but it's definitely, peak of quality, at least in a few particular items. I can name a few people I really like. Pontormo's one. The Bernini sculptures are freaking insane, dude. Freaking insane. Anyway. But yeah, I was never really critical of them. I never was critical of them at all. Because I went there. I went to Italy. I saw them. Even before that, of course, I know about art history. So like the idea of applying like a critical eye to it never occurred to me ever. and I was listening to actually, I think his name's Orthodox Reactionary. He has an audio book of, it's called, I'm going to put in this blue halo here, even though it'll probably bleed out. Let's just go for it. I want to keep us moving. This audio book of Seraphim Rose's Orthodox Survival Guide. And when he got to the Renaissance, it's kind of just him going through all of history. And I shouldn't do that. I want to get the nice crisp blue. It looks so good here. So we'll paint in his clothes, and we'll come back to that. When he gets to the Renaissance, he applies like a really critical lens to it. And he's like, that's how you get these guys, dudes, and, it's kind of weird if you think about it. Like, all of a sudden, all the churches are filled with paintings of, like, naked men and stuff. Isn't that kind of weird? And aside from the artistic aspect of it, which is, of course, like I just said, like some of the highest quality, that was the first time I was like, yeah, actually that is kind of weird a little bit. I'm not saying it's like 100% off the bat bad, but I was kind of like, I never thought about it with that like critical lens before, ever. So it's interesting if you find it off-putting. I would think that's interesting. I don't really know what to think about it too much. I can't really say theologically because it's kind of right in that spot where I only really get criticism of like the Western Christian stuff from the outside like that. It takes someone who's not part of the system to be like, hey guys, isn't it kind of weird you have all these naked dudes around here? And it hits right in this spot where it's both what I love and then maybe also what I could be critical about with the system. So I can't really say, although it is interesting to me. That's all I could really say is that the idea of being critical of it is interesting. Hold on, I'm punching this part of my chair back in. But I don't know. I mean, the other thing I can say about Michelangelo for sure is that I guess we've kind of taken a little detour here into like shitting on art academics, which I'm totally cool with. Is that the number one thing they always do? You've probably seen it on Twitter for a variety of topics, but the number one thing they always do is come through and be like, hey, guess what? Like, this historical figure was gay. Like, we just figured it out. Like, you didn't know, but this historical figure that you love was, like, totally gay. Surprise. And it's always just like, ugh, you want to get you want to get notoriety that badly, lady. You want to get your PhD by just saying that, like, random artist number 941 was gay. Or the other thing they bust out is, like, guess what? Like, Vermeer... You really like Vermeer, but, his daughter actually did all his paintings, so surprise, he didn't do them. We just figured out that his daughter did them all. Wow, so gotta rewrite history now. And I'm sure some of that stuff's true, but, like, you can literally find stuff like that for every single freaking figure in art history for all of time. That really is annoying. So I give that caveat to say that people do that for Michelangelo, and actually, honestly, I really can tell you, I feel like Michelangelo was definitely gay. Definitely. I don't know if that's controversial for anyone. I don't even mean it in a negative way, but just as an artist. So again, I can only come from my own perspective of someone who makes art. But like I've seen his female body images up close, and it's literally just 100% confidence. I can say that it was at least at that time made by someone who had not touched a female body in real life. I mean, that's just literally the reality of it. So again, I'm not saying it in a bad way, but it just becomes interesting when it stacks on top of now all the churches are full of these like naked dude pictures, kind of weird. And like, of course, I'm ready to be like, yeah, well, it's church history, it's church art, like, whatever. I'm kind of willing to like sweep it under the rug in a way. Maybe it's coping because I like the art so much, but whatever. But that's kind of just like an interesting detail for me, for sure. There's lots of like little weird details there I could go into too. Like, there's kind of a famous picture, Michelangelo's Holy Family. It's painted in this circular frame if you look it up. And nice, I made him in red, I made him in green. It's painted in this circular frame, and it was commissioned for this guy. And it's kind of well known if you go deep into the Michelangelo art stuff because he made this picture for this guy. It must have been like for his house or something. I just want to dry this up so I can come in here and put this blue down. I'll fix this little like stainy part over here, it's fine. So he made this Holy Family image, so it's Mary and Joseph and Jesus, obviously, as a baby. And when you look at it, the first thing you notice, I should really pull it up, honestly, but I don't want to go that hard out of my way right now. But I kind of do want to. Should we pull it up? Let's pull it up really quick. We've never done a live detour. Just really quick. It'll totally be worth it. Okay. This is totally worth it. The first live detour of the show that we've ever done. Get excited. I know you're so excited. You're like, wow, I'm here for this historical moment. And I know you really are. So hold up. We're going to pull it up. Okay, check this out. And once again, I'm not even bringing this up in a negative, like derogatory way or something. I'm literally just bringing it up because it kind of came up. But check this out. How can I full screen this? It doesn't matter. I'm not going to get that so into it. So Michelangelo paints this picture, right, for this guy. Holy Family. He commissioned it. Let's say it was for his house or something. We don't really know. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to blow up this part up here just because this is the relevant part. And again, I know some people are watching on their phones or something. So first thing you probably notice is that Mary is jacked. Look at this. She's freaking jacked. She's got like a hardcore bicep. Like she's jacked, man. Look, she even got like the lateral muscles over here. I mean, she is just, that's really the only word for it. Look, she's literally flexing the bicep. Look at this. Look at this. I'm not even this jacked, I feel like, honestly. Maybe I'm like just below this level. But anyway, so Mary is jacked in this picture. Okay, that's the first thing you notice. But then the second thing you notice, maybe you noticed it already, is there's literally just these hardcore naked dudes hanging out. Just these straight up naked dudes for no reason, all just chilling around in this scene. Zoom out, for literally no reason. For literally no reason, the background of this picture is just full of naked dudes. And the anecdote, you know, art history anecdotes are usually made up after the fact, but the anecdote, this one might be real. The guy who commissioned it was like, hey man, cool, why did you fill the background of this painting with these like straight up naked dudes? And Michelangelo was like, they're hunters. They're hunters. They're hunting. Okay. Anyway, I thought I should pull that up. I thought that would be a cool little detour. So anyway, I just felt like that was relevant because you asked me, you know, you get a weird vibe from the Sistine Chapel stuff. Why could that be? I don't know, man. I don't really know. I don't really have like some firm answer there, but I thought that was worth it. Okay, anyway, we got to hustle this along. I feel like the first half of the show is always like the setup. The first half of the show is like just setting up the dominoes, and then the second half is like knocking them down and making the whole thing look sick. It's not like a linear progression. It's definitely like a J-curve or something. So anyway, I don't know. I wish I had some answer there, but I don't know. And then people, you know, sometimes people who are like very critical of the church, mostly like Protestants, will sort of flex and be like, oh yeah, look at this, like, you know, they usually pull up Donatello's David. David is a big one. Because Donatello's David, you know, at a certain point in time, the convention of like how to depict David was not established. So you get Michelangelo's David, who's like this really jacked dude, you know. Nothing wrong with that. But then you get Donatello's David, who's really this like, I mean, you know, not to be disrespectful, he's this very like sensuous, like little boy, and he has this feather running up his thigh. I could pull it up, but I don't want to detour fully into like, you know, the weird aspects of Renaissance art right now. But anyway, the point is that, I don't know. And then also it kind of stacks on top of it because, I don't know if most people know this, but there was really a flourishing of the occult in Tuscany at that time. I mean, that's when the Corpus Hermetica was translated. You have the Medicis and stuff doing like alchemy and all that stuff. I actually was in some study in Tuscany. I was in this room where they had the roof of it painted like the 4 elements and all that stuff. And it was some like Medici study room that they had like outfitted while they were into their, you know, weird esoterica studies. So it's kind of weird, you know, all of a sudden within Christendom you get this like a flourishing of art of naked dudes that, like, I mean, let's just be real, some of it is like a little strange historically, let's just say. And then you also get this flourishing of like occult studies that are sort of right up against the church. You know, the Medicis are involved and stuff. But then also, just to make it even more complicated, it's literally some of the best art that was ever made on the planet. So it's, who knows, man. It's just a freaking really weird situation, honestly. And I don't know what to think about it. Haven't thought about it in a while, so thanks for taking me on that detour really quick, actually. Baby Jesus was also pretty jacked. Yeah, it kind of feels respectful, though. You know, you can get away with Baby Jesus being jacked. That kind of makes sense. Okay, anyway, let's keep this moving. I'm just going to outline this in brown over here. So I'm going to pick up the pace, probably at the expense of details and stuff. but it's all good. Nice. It was a great detour. Just Renaissance art. Some of the best art ever. Also a teeny tiny bit sketchy. But honestly, I really don't want to end on a note of like being negative. I really can't overstate how much it actually truly is some of the best art ever created on the planet. Which really just makes the whole thing weirder, doesn't it? Okay. Let's throw down one more little stem. Let's get the Theotokos up here. We got a lot to do and like not a lot of time, so let's just make this happen right now. Okay, I'm gonna put them in a yellow flower. Usually Mary's associated with like white flowers, that kind of stuff. I could put her in a white flower. Let's do it actually. Let's make competent decisions. Let's get it going. I'm just gonna paint in the outline of it with this raw sienna color here. Let's see. What else was I thinking about talking about you guys with? You know, the whole like utopia politics thing. It also got kind of interesting because I watched this. This is another little detour. We'll go on really quick. I watched this. YouTube recommends like certain documentaries, and all of a sudden they have like 1 million views and stuff. I normally don't watch them, but one thing came up, and it was about breatharians. You guys know about that? Breatharians. It's kind of like this offshoot of like weird New Age stuff, where like people convince themselves they can live on like breath alone, and obviously they can't. People have actually like died trying it and stuff, which is kind of funny but also really sad. I'm just gonna paint in like a luminous white Theotokos up here, and I'm kind of gonna cheat a little bit because I'm just gonna, I don't know, should I throw in just the outline? I kind of feel like I shouldn't now that I said that. I'll throw in the brown. I'll just kind of do it while I'm talking. I'm not gonna put in like their faces and stuff. It'll just be kind of like this intentionally smaller, like kind of all the way at the top kind of figures up here. Anyway, yeah, so obviously they can't do that, right? And people have like died trying to do it, which like I said is like really sad. But it just kind of struck me in like an interesting way because I don't know, I feel like it's an interesting aspect of like all that spiritual new agey stuff that I feel like somehow also dovetails with like idealistic politics, where like you hear these people talk about it, and maybe it's just because I used to be in that world. Not like people trying not to eat and like live only via their breath. But like I used to be with like all these weird people who were like really into all these spirituality forums that were basically like, well, if you think it could really happen, you know? And like in the doc, they would like talk to these people. Jesus is just going to be this little like bundle, little baby bundle up there. They talk to these people and they're like, yeah, you know, well, like here at this hunger strike, these people weren't eating and they died. Like, what makes you think you can just not eat, you know? And basically they're like, well, you know, they just didn't believe enough. They didn't like believe in themselves enough, you know? And I don't know, this is kind of a leap, but like in a weird way, like since I've been thinking about the political stuff, I've also been thinking about like, you know, like all these really weird like pathological manifestations of like leftist politics, and how there kind of is this weird, not that there's not like pathologies on the right, obviously, but I'm just going to make like a little connection here, where there kind of is this weird like utopian thinking. And again, it kind of blurs the line between politics and religion and all that stuff, because I feel like one thing that is very powerful about Christianity is that it's actually not utopian. It's like, yeah, you live in a fallen world. It's not going to be ideal. Sorry. You can try to do something about it. To some extent you can, but ultimately you can't. There's like this safeguard. You know, there's like this little rails keeping you in that's like, yeah, not going to happen. Sorry. You know, the devil is real. Spiritual warfare. You're fallen nature, original sin. The heart is, you know, desperately wicked. You have to do all this stuff that you don't want to do because of the fall. So yeah, there's like these guardrails, you know. But I often get kind of fascinated by like other worldviews where there aren't those guardrails, you know. And I somehow feel like, you know, it's just in a weird way that's not intuitive connects to a lot of the political stuff. Because don't you feel like sometimes when you're talking to people about the political stuff, it sometimes butts up against that wall where they're like, well, yeah, it's like idealistic. Like, you know, we could just get rid of X, Y, and Z or totally change human nature and it would be totally perfect. Or, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure how much I want to like draw out that connection specifically, but it's just really interesting. You know, it's like a weird, interesting sync up between those two things. And one of the books I was reading, it's actually by a guy who wrote about the occult stuff in the Renaissance. His name's David Heiser. He's some like Lutheran priest or something. But he has this book about like sacred history, and that's what the whole first half is kind of about. It's all about how Christianity, I think I showed it on the show one time. I think I brought it up on the show. But it's all about how like Christianity is like powerful because it inserts itself into history in this way. It's like rooted in the reality of like man's social and political and historical continuum. It's like it didn't just happen. Like, if you read like, I'm not like talking shit, but like if you read like the Hindu myths, they just happened in this like ether space of like, just some of them are rooted in history actually, but let's just say whatever. I shouldn't use a specific example, but it doesn't matter. A lot of myths, when you read them, let's take a safe example and say like Greek myths. I just remember the Bhagavad Gita actually is supposed to take place in like an actual war that happened, so maybe that's Hindu stuff isn't a good example. But let's say like Greek myths, they just happen in this like etheric kind of like idyllic like Platonic time space. But like with Christianity, it's like no, it was literally in this spot on your map at this particular historical moment. And it's kind of interesting. It kind of reminds me of like, sometimes when you do like esoteric like body stuff, I don't do that anymore, but they would talk about like this, like the human soul and like where it's tied to your physical like constituency. If you go really hard into like chakra stuff and things like that, which I don't really recommend, but it's just a perfect example for what I'm trying to say. There's like literally like a spot in your heart where like your soul is tied to like your physical body, like your muscles and bones and stuff. And it's almost like at the incarnation is this point where like the spiritual divine system is like tied, in the chakra system, it's like literally a knot that's tied, and it's almost like the incarnation, by virtue of happening at this like particular time and space within like real history, almost like tethers the spiritual and the historical and the political and all these different forces together in this way that's like really powerful. Okay, that's enough slightly poorly thought out rants. But actually I was thinking about that all week, actually. I don't know if I explained that well, but I actually was thinking about that all week, Just kind of the way in which like all these different things, It's kind of like if you're like schizophrenic or something and you look around and you see like the number 37 and then you go somewhere else and you see the number 37 and you're like, oh my God, it has to mean something. It's not a coincidence. In like a slightly less schizo way, hopefully, I feel like I see the same patterns in the weirdest places. Like I'll think about when I was really into like new age stuff and I'll see the same exact pattern if I go check out some like, lefty like communist podcast or something, which sometimes I do to make sure I'm not living in a bubble. It's like you see the same thought patterns and you go on Twitter and you see some like, person arguing about X, Y, and Z, and you're like, wow, I see the same pattern again, It's like, why? Why does it keep coming up like that? It makes me feel kind of schizo. Because you shouldn't see these same patterns if it's all just, occurring on this blank slate. But I mean, obviously, of course, it's not. All right. Cool. All right, this is a good framework, but it took us a lot of time to get here, actually. Cool. I forgot we haven't really done like very like detailed stuff in a really long time. I could just like section it off, but you know what? Let's so you stuck with me that whole time doing the detailed stuff. Thank you for doing that. Let's kind of make it a little bit more exciting. So let's get that manuscripty feeling I've been like hyping up for so long. Let's just come in and get some like flourishes. Let's see how far we can get on kind of like a tight background in the next, however much time we have. If you guys want to ask me stuff, you can. I kind of want to get to like talking with you guys. I guess that's mostly what I wanted to like get off my chest, honestly. I don't know if people know that I do that. I don't talk about it ever, obviously, but I really do listen to, like if I walk my dog, my time is like yours. Thank you for being here. My time is precious, like yours. Thank you for choosing to spend this time with me. So it's not like I just sit around listening to like random shit all the time. But when I have some downtime, maybe it's the evening, I want to chill, maybe like you're doing right now, doing the dishes, something like that, or just hanging out, watching some wholesome programming. I really do try and like mix it up and get it from all over the spectrum, and cool, perfect. And yeah, I've been trying to crack a few cases, you could say, but anyway. So I want to just come in and get that kind of like, it's like a mixture of like tight, but also slightly whimsical. Perfect. Whimsical is a really lame word, but I didn't want to say Dr. Seussian. That's actually the word that I thought of, to be completely honest with you. And let's see. So we got those. And I'm kind of just going to make these coming up in front of the dome. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is with the color I have now, I'm just going to come in. Oh, the curve has to be perfect. Perfect. That was pretty good, actually. And just come in and put these vines in. It may look like I'm doing it randomly, but I do want them to look like they have some type of cohesion. And we'll come here, and I'm also making sure, just to get a window into my mind, I'm leaving enough room, because we're going to come back and put these like flowers in on them. So that's what I'm thinking right now. Perfect. Perfect. Cool. So we're going to come in here. See, anything else I wanted to mention? Not really, honestly. I've been thinking about all that. I'm stoked for, honestly, the election stuff to be over so I can get back into, like, hardcore, like, theological mode. I'm always in hardcore theological mode, but I have had one ear to the ground in the news in a way that I normally don't. Okay, now we got a powerful decision to make. We got these sort of, like, main vines coming off of everything. We could go, so, like, there's two roads that fork before us now. We could go more twisty-turny vines, or we could go more leaves and flowers. Let's that dichotomy makes me think of, like, you know, are we going later in time? Are we going like 1200 to 1400 AD, or are we going back like 800 1000 AD? And I want to keep it simpler, so we're going to tend backwards a little bit more. So we're going to put some fat leaves, some fat flowers. That's the move right now for sure. I'm looking for my viridian. Oh, someone please invent an opaque viridian. The problem is it's so transparent that I can never just drop it. But that dark green color is exactly what I want. It's exactly what I want. Once again, I am restrained by the reality of the material world. Once again, see, if I just lived in ideal land like we were talking about, I could live off my breath. I could have the green paint I want. But I'm cursed with a religion and ideology that restrains me. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually extremely blessed. Okay, so I'm just going to throw down these fat leaves right now. You guys are kind of zoomed out, so I'm just going to kind of put this in quickly. I'm going to paint them in. It's like I literally can't turn off my obsessive detail mode. So if you guys want to ask me anything, you can. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of muse about other things that I've been thinking about this week. Otherwise, it's mostly election stuff, honestly. But we talk about that all the time. Not the election, you know, it's never just like the surface level of it. But we talk about, like, you know, epistemic divorce and, you know, different worldviews, you know, decohering. So, I don't know. I'm not going to give you guys the 101. You guys obviously know probably what my vibe is on all that stuff. Boom, coming down over here. Boom, perfect. I will say that I do think it's going to be interesting, not just like, you know, with politics, there's like the surface level of it, like, sure, whatever, but, you know, with such a huge narrative divorce, it's going to be pretty difficult to come back from, which is kind of crazy, but it's also really good for me as, like, you know, someone who really likes dealing with that, like, chaotic informational worldview space. So it's kind of good for me in a way, I guess. It's very, like, fertile ground, but I do think it's going to be kind of crazy. Okay, throw in some more leaves over here. Oh man, you know, I could have put in like autumn leaf style, but then that would have just destroyed any kind of nice. Yeah, the leaves are looking good. That looks dope. Would have totally destroyed any kind of like medieval feeling we had going on. What's really going to be the decider here is the flowers. I don't know if you guys have seen, but in like older English manuscripts and stuff, the flowers they put down are insane. They actually don't even really look like flowers. Okay, I have to not get my hand in the paint. Perfect. Otherwise, I got some more cool projects going on. I'm working on this print for the 7 Sorrows of Mary, and it's looking dope. It took me like all the free time I had last week. Okay, let's come around here. I feel like we can get this kind of like loopy. I'm coming in a little low on this leaf right here, especially if I want to get a flower in here, which I do. Oh, I should have done it that way. Doesn't matter. Okay, now we're going to make them a little bit darker at the top. I need more Viridian paint. Any thoughts on the Million MAGA March? That's a good question, actually. Not any super interesting ones. I mean, I like that it happened in the sense that nothing too crazy went down. To be honest with you, now that it's over, I didn't want to post it and be like, you know, bringing a negative vibe, but I was really worried that something crazy was going to happen, just because you have such a cauldron of like, you know, potential, you know, false flag actors, you know, people that are just have bad intentions in general, you know, even like other states maybe, you know, it's a U.S. election. Of course, other states want to get their hands in X, Y, and Z, but nothing bad happened, so that's tight. I don't know, man. It's interesting. I don't want to make it sound like I'm talking shit about the people that did it, because I appreciate that they did it. But in general, from like a, you know, me sitting in my room kind of obsessively analyzing the media stuff, it's just interesting because I feel like we're in such a unique time that I can't tell how things look from the outside anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I'm thinking about like my mom. This has nothing to do with the organizers or doing it or anything like that. It's just to be clear. Like, you asked me what I think about it. I'm thinking about like my mom or something, you know? I'm like, does she even know that it happened? Like, do normal people watching normal news even know that that happened? And like, maybe they do, but then they probably just get some like weird, you know, twisted version of it. You know, I guess it was trending on Twitter, but I feel like when I looked at it, everyone was just saying like, oh, it's nowhere near 1 million people. You know, they're cool. So it's interesting. Like, I don't know what the future of things like that is. Like, of course, especially right now, like, you know, if people feel that way, they should definitely be doing it and going and stuff. I'm not counter signaling that whole situation. But I just wonder, it makes me think about like the information warfare aspects of it, you know, because let's just say, like, you know, let's say something bad happened at that march, you know, that's all people would know about, you know what I mean? So it sucks that, you know, we're kind of in this situation where it's kind of like how I always talk about the internet. It's like more real than reality. It is kind of in a way. And like, I just wonder how real life events are going to start playing out into the totally controlled and now totally divergent media sphere. There's a really cool essay that I like. It's one of my books right here. If no one can find it online, maybe I'll scan it or something. But it's called The Future of Ceremonies, or it's something about basically like the implication of ceremonies in a world of television. And it's really cool. It's a semiotics essay. It's one of the best ones in my opinion. And it talks about how, like, okay, so I kind of have to decide how to do these flowers. I kind of just want to go for it. Like, well, oh, you guys can't even see up here. Oh, my bad. I kind of just want to go for it, so I might just, like, throw in the flowers right now and just kind of wing it while we're talking. So, yeah, the essay is called sort of like how... I forget, it has a catchy title, but it's basically about how ceremonies are different now that people watch them on TV. And it makes these really interesting observations. Like, one of the main ones I remember is it basically focuses on like some royal wedding that happened back then. It was in like the 70s or something. And what it talks about is like, well, there's this like hierarchy of spectatorship and like this hierarchy of order that manifests in this really interesting way. So like, let's say you went to the royal wedding back then. Like I said, it was in the 70s or whatever. If you're actually physically there, the concern of the people around you is making sure that you don't accidentally be confused for someone who is truly participating in the ceremony. It sounds really abstract, but it manifests in ways like, you know, if you went there, you wouldn't have a real cloth flag. People had these little like plastic flags, you know. Whereas the author observed that people at home do the opposite. If you're at home watching it, you want to feel like you're actually there participating, so they have real flags. And it's this weird inversion where, like, if you're actually there, you have this fake stuff because you don't want to make it seem like you're participating in the spectacle of the ceremony that you came to observe. But if you're at home watching TV, of course, no one's going to be confused thinking that you're actually part of this royal wedding situation. So you can wear and have all the real fake stuff that you have, all the real stuff that you want. So that has nothing to do with the march, but what I mean is that it's interesting because as ceremonies and social events became televised, there's all these interesting, weird little ways that manifests in them, and I feel like the same thing is happening now, A, with the internet, of course, but then B, there's a secondary layer wherein it's not just the internet, it's the controlled internet where people basically can tell other people, you know, what to think about everything. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I don't mean that to sound negative about the whole situation. It's just something that I think about that I think we'll probably all have to like confront and think about and stuff, I mean, how big of a protest could the media like just totally ignore, That was a pretty big one though. It looked pretty cool. I did watch it from home. I was chilling watching it. Anything else? That's a good question. Any other interesting thoughts I had about it? Not especially, honestly. I was kind of just chilling in the studio all day watching it. I saw some cool speeches. But that's basically it. Your snapshot progression portraits election day and post-election are spot on. Not really a question, just saying they really reflected mine. I assume a lot of our people's headspace and stuff like that. Yeah, totally, dude. I paused them. I didn't stop doing them. In case anyone doesn't know what he's talking about, on my Twitter, I am, I guess, still doing a picture every day to document the vibe, because I thought it would be kind of cool historically, like, whatever happens with the election, to go back and be like, here's what it felt like every day as we went through this process. I didn't do one yesterday just because on Sunday night I drew one with this guy sitting at this crossroads, and there's a big American flag grandfather clock next to him, and there's just like lights in the distance, but he's just sitting at this dark crossroads and he's looking up at the stars. And I didn't do one yesterday because I was like, honestly, that's still how I feel. That's still exactly how I feel. It's still the vibe. So I don't know. I want to do one every day, but I also can't tell how many more I should do of me just waiting, because I feel like don't you feel like that's still the vibe today, honestly? Like that guy just sitting at this dark crossroads. So I don't know, maybe I'll do one more. I told my wife, I was like, I don't know if I should do one or not, because it's still the same vibe. And she was like, when the vibe changes, just document the vibe. She was like, don't draw the vibe if it's not there. And I was like, wow, you're so fucking smart. Anyway, I remember seeing you talk about how the definition of left and right wing are hard to distinguish now. Have you made any progress towards that? Oh my god, dude, I was honestly trying not to talk about it, but yeah, I have been thinking about that a lot, dude. Honestly, the whole left-right thing is just like, at this point, it's kind of like a little maddening to me. Just because, so I'm kind of putting these flowers, I want them to be like they're blooming as they're going toward the top, so I'm kind of just painting these closed flowers. Yeah, honestly, like I said, man, I mean, I don't really bring it up on Twitter because I don't want to make it seem like I'm like trying to be like this woke centrist or something, because like I'm really not. Like, you guys know, like I do have like strong political opinions and stuff, but like just to make sure I'm not living in a bubble, but also just because it's a phenomenon that I really want to understand. I do listen to like lefty stuff, and I do actually try and get convinced of left-wing positions and stuff like that. Like, again, like I don't talk about it on Twitter because I don't want to make it seem like I'm such a big brain, galaxy brain guy, but like I've literally gone on like lefty forums and made posts and been like, hey, I kind of see things this way, but I really want to understand why I should see things your way. Like, someone try and convince me of this, or let me know what I should listen to or watch. And like I've done that like multiple times, honestly. But the whole lefty thing is so freaking weird because it's this amalgamation of all these different things that almost like don't actually really go together. You could say that about the right wing too, but honestly, my real thoughts on that, I kind of did want to talk about it. Just I'll mention it briefly because some people might not be interested, but it also does relate to everything with the spiritual stuff and everything. It's like, I don't get, like, let's say someone's like, it kind of seems to basically stem from like, negative views of capitalism, right? And I'm kind of like down, honestly, if someone's like, hey, I'm not personally, maybe you are, that's totally cool. I personally am not one of these like hardcore like capitalism is like the number one, like that's the best thing ever and you can't say anything bad about it. That's just really not my vibe. So if someone comes along and they're like, hey, like, let's say there's the first few steps of like, hey, capitalism actually it's inherently has these little glitches, let's say, where like, workers get taken advantage of, and especially now, let's say someone, basically falls all the way through the cracks, and then they're kind of basically screwed, and there's really nothing they can do about it, and if you have no money, it's not really fair for X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, cool, honestly, like, yeah, okay, like, let's just say hypothetically I'm totally down. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, like, people get screwed out of X, Y, and Z, and like, billionaire mega exploits, whatever. Let's just say I'm like, cool, I'm totally there. But then there's this jump. I was posting about this on Twitter a little bit the other day. then there's this jump to like, so we have to get rid of like private property and no one can own anything. And, actually, what the solution is actually the solution is that we have to have the government own everything. You know how you don't like that, people get taken advantage of and can't really, figure out X, Y, and Z. Well, the solution is that actually the government should own literally everything. And I'm like, dude, what? And I just don't get that jump, and no one can explain it to me. And the other thing is that on top of that, you ever notice, like, as much as everyone online is like, oh, the left, like the modern left, and like the lefties, oh man, like they're not actually advocating for. Have you ever heard anyone, honestly, in a discussion like that ever, that's like part of like the left, bring up like hardcore, old school, like lefty economic policies and all that stuff? Almost never, dude. I've really never heard one of those people be like, yeah, and that's why like we have to transfer the means of production over to the government. I've never heard anyone bring that up ever. So it's so weird because you have this force that's like the political left, but like how often do they actually talk about like leftist economics and stuff like that? My friend made this joke and she was like, yeah, it's because they're not the left politically, they're the left-hand path. That was really funny. But I don't know, man. It's just like a nut that I can't really crack. And like I want to see it from that perspective, but like I really don't. And I really hate in my own worldview. I hate when I have something in my mind where I feel like I'm straw manning someone else's position. And when that happens, I try and like flesh it out. Like if there's some theological position where, let's say someone, has this theological position that I totally disagree with, and I'm like, wow, I really don't know how an intelligent person can come to that conclusion. I don't want to just leave it blank in my mind and be like, well, they must be stupid. You know what I mean? So like I try and flesh it out, but like I really can't fully flesh out the lefty position, like I said, because there's just so many like, okay, so I don't like capitalism, so now the government has to like own everything. Like, yo, what? Why would I want that? And also they're gonna like, be hands in, making sure everyone kind of like has the same amount of money and all this stuff. I know I'm like poorly describing it, but I don't know, man. So you asked me if I was thinking what I was thinking about the left-right divide, and I kind of just realized I was like, are they even really like the left? Like maybe that's just like a misnomer for them, honestly. I don't know. It's kind of what I was thinking about. I don't really get it. And also, actually, just to kind of wrap up on a more like cohesive note, and then we'll kind of see where we're at in the picture and see what we need to do next. We'll kind of maybe move on from the flowers, but the flowers are looking dope, honestly. They're looking good. The fade out is good. Like I said, I listen to stuff. It doesn't mean I'm like well educated about it, but I do listen to it. And like sometimes I feel like it's a result of like socio-historical forces and not actually some like political position. Like perfect example. Here's a perfect example of in case I've been rambling. I feel like what I said makes sense, but in case it doesn't. Like, I listened to this like very like hardcore lefty, like commie, like we're revolutionary communists like podcast just one time when I was walking my dog, because I was like, I'll check it out. Why not? I can't really pay attention too much when I'm walking with my dog. Like sometimes something crazy will happen, so that's when I usually listen to like weird stuff. The point is though, I want to make sure I make this point, so we'll pause for a second and see what we need to do. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so this woman was on this podcast and she's like, yeah, I'm like a hardcore revolutionary communist. Like that's my political ideology. Like, okay. And she's Native American, right? So she's Native American and she's advocating for her people, right? So the guy's like, oh, are you an anarchist though? And she's like, well, no, because my people need like a state. Like the state that we would have like protects the people, in a way. I mean, that's not exactly what she said. That's basically what she was getting at. So it's like, okay, so is that person, if you have a Native American person who is advocating for their people, being their Native American group, who is advocating for an ethnic state that would protect her Native American group, is she a right-wing ethno-nationalist? Or is it because she's, part of an indigenous people that she more identifies with like Maoism or some revolutionary thing on the left-wing side? Well, how do you tell? How can you even tell? By all definitions, she is an ethno-nationalist. Literally. She's literally an ethno-nationalist. But doesn't that make her right-wing? Or, but then what are there left-wing ethno-nationalists? I guess. I don't know, but does that make any sense? Like, what? I mean, her whole thing wasn't like class based. It was based around her ethnicity and needing to protect her people. So more and more, I just encounter these speed bumps where I'm like, wait, what? Like, how does this divide even make sense? And I could go on and on and on about that, you know, like what about Tibetans? You know, you have all these Tibetan people advocating for a Tibetan state. Again, they said they had it, but, you know, for a Tibetan people, are they right-wing ethno-nationalists? Well, I don't know. What is that? You know, what would that even mean? Like, I guess, kind of. There's this point where, like, being a populist just kind of, like, bifurcates depending on how you want to view it as a result of these, like, larger socio-historical factors. Anyway, I could go on about that, but yeah, since you asked, that's kind of what I have been thinking about on that front recently. But honestly, it's not something I spend too much time thinking about, despite, you know, that I got really impassioned just now, because ultimately I'm like, well, you know, whatever, who cares really? It doesn't really. Ultimately, I'm like just breaking down the paradigm in my head, and I'm like, this is just like a fun mental exercise. It's not something that I'm really trying to like push too hard on. Business idea, religious pattern wallpaper. Yeah, we can think about that. This isn't academic or anything, but I'm willing to politically align with anyone who genuinely and sincerely sees the world that has problems and wants to solve them. Seen too many people of both sides who are either fine with or enjoy that someone of the other side are suffering, and that's not a place you want to start with. Yeah, if I missed anyone's question or anything, you can re-ask it, but yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm kind of just like a populist, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of just what I am, but I'm like a populist for like all different peoples, you know? I could go into it more, but, you know. I also almost feel like it's like, you know, more productive to just kind of, like you said, like focus on like what we can actually fix and stuff. That being said, though, not that you were saying that you're this, but I'm not really like galaxy brain centrist. Like, I actually do have like strong opinions, and the almost maddening thing about it is like, despite everything I just said, though, like I can break it down in my mind intellectually and be like, yeah, it's really just the result of, you know, the whole divide is really just constructed. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, but actually though, there is like another side, and they're tangibly different, and it's not an illusion. And I can't really square all that away, but, you know, maybe it's just fallen world, like weird politics, and, you know, that's just how it is. It'll always be rooted in strange stuff like that. Okay, that was a really fun detour, but let's just focus back for a second. Although if more people ask me stuff, we can talk about it more. Okay, so we got the picture here. It's funny because I was thinking kings, you know, what we're talking about kind of relates. Okay, and like David, you know, David was like not really a perfect guy. Just gonna rope it back in there. Anyway, although he was a good guy. Not perfect though. Okay, so I'm gonna throw in some stars. I'm just mixing this yellow color over here. Just gonna quickly throw in some stars. We could go for like, I thought about putting the halo lines in, but I didn't want it to look too Eastern. That's what I was actually worried about. I thought it would look too Eastern. So I'm just going to throw in these dots here. Yeah, now we're getting that kind of folky, medieval feeling. Perfect. This looks dope. I used to be far left, hardcore Marxist-Leninist, but you're right. What we call left in the USA isn't left in that sense. It is a form of liberalism. It supports capital, and I want to enforce socially progressive views of society and stuff. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's kind of more rooted in like social issues and stuff, I guess. Anyway, okay, so we're going to throw down the stars and stuff here. I've also honestly, not that we're not going to do it right now, because we don't have time, but also it has nothing to do with the show. But I've kind of just been in the mood to like argue about like social issues and politics and stuff with people. Or anything, theological stuff. Someone posted on Twitter today like, oh, Christians shouldn't drink coffee. And I was like, boom, I was like, engage me. I was like, oh, freaking. They were just joking, but I don't know why. Maybe it's all the coffee I drink. Coffee makes me want to argue, but we're not going to do that right now. Okay, anyway. Okay, so we're actually looking pretty good here. I'm kind of going to let the ship sail on the idea of this being, obviously we only have like 5 more minutes to, you know, have it be like a totally cohesive thing. I think that we're going to add in one more detail. And what I think that's going to be, really like the way these flowers came out, by the way. Looks really dope. Really, really dope. I'm looking at my own picture being like, yeah, that's great. That's great right there. What I'm thinking that we can do that will add a lot of depth is I'm going to take this gold color right here, and at a low opacity, I'm just going to put in some flourishes in the background, and that's going to kind of punch out the texture, and then that's going to be the picture. I kind of want to put some vertical lines in, but, you know, we already have this nice, almost like pyramid structure, so I'm not going to do that. So let's see. I really want to just get this color over here. It's not Eastern enough because it's not Chinese aesthetics, true. So I thought Jews argue Jesus wasn't actually descended from King David. I don't know. Probably. I'm not academically equipped to go into it at the moment, but I think... So this is just literally me going off the cuff for something I actually don't really know about fully. But let's just see if we got this color right. It's a little not transparent enough. I think there is a strong effort, obviously, after Jesus for the Jews to kind of like look backwards and be like, oh, well, he's not the Messiah because look at this and look at this and look at this. So that wouldn't really surprise me, although I couldn't really talk about specific things like that. But that wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, naturally, right? That just makes sense as a result of like socio-historical stuff. Of course, you're going to be like, yeah, well, actually, that's not what happened if that's not like your religion. You get that in Hinduism and Buddhism too. Certain manifestations of Hinduism look at Buddha and they're like, no, actually, he was like a demon because of X, Y, and Z. Sort of a natural response, you could say. Nobody likes to be wrong. Now it's too opaque. Let's find that. Let's come in here. There actually is some... I wish I knew the name of it so I could tell you in case you don't know. But there is some translation even of the scriptures, I feel like, that allegedly the Jewish authorities made some like new translation of the Old Testament. It starts with a J, and allegedly they made it to change certain things. Like, isn't that where the idea that like there's some prophecy about like, you know, the Messiah being born of a virgin, and they went back and they were like, no, actually it doesn't say virgin here, it says, you know, X, Y, and Z. But I haven't really delved into that too much. Yeah, perfect. So this is going to kind of give us that like manuscripty page pattern just in the background. It's not really meant to be like something people would notice if they first look at the image, you know. Sometimes it's pretty powerful to put in those kind of details as an illustrator. Like if you put in something where like someone, I mean, of course now it's kind of like obvious, but little details where it's like if someone first looked at the picture they wouldn't notice, but it definitely affects the overall vibe. That's kind of what I'm going for here. We got a few more minutes left. Let's kind of wrap this up. What else? There's a lot of right-wing critiques of... I'm trying to read this while I'm like doing this right now. A lot of right-wing critiques of capitalism and leftist, non-statist stuff. Yeah, it all blends together, honestly. That's kind of why it's nice hanging out in religion world more than politics world. Not just for that reason, but like, I don't know. I like knowing where I am. If that makes sense. Any idea how many modern religious Jews are Talmudic? It depends on what you mean by that, but it's kind of weird in my opinion. Again, this is just my opinion. But I think most American Jews, I don't even know if they know what the Talmud is, dude, to be completely honest with you. I really don't think that most of them do, honestly. Let's see, Reform Jews in America. Do I think that over 50% of them, if you stop them on the street and you were like, what's the Talmud, could tell you? No, I don't think so. Over 50%? That's a really high percent, dude. So I don't know, it depends on what you mean by that word. Conversely, though, that's what their tradition is, you know. Not in a negative way, but, you know, it's based on that more so than what, you know, the temple that doesn't exist anymore. That's just reality. What else? Weird, that's crazy how it would be fulfilled and they'd say no, not good enough. Yeah, allegedly that's what happened, right? That reminds me of opening scene in movie Snatch, never saw it. Masoretic text, modern Jewish Torah version, and the version used by Erasmus and Luther was modified by the scribes after the fall of the Second Temple. Yeah, that's definitely what I'm talking about. But it starts with the J, right? It starts with the J or something. One of the translation I'm thinking of. Someone said danger. Yeah, I'm just talking about the facts, though. I'm not going too spicy takes theologically. All right. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Cool. Cool. Looks good. Cool. Yeah, looks good. I think I'm gonna bring down this pattern a little bit in the back, and then I think we're gonna wrap it up. Cool. Nice. That looks pretty good. This looks pretty dope. There's a nice little detour talking stuff. Renaissance, politics. Didn't really see that coming, but it's kind of perfect. I was thinking, you know, I kind of picked the kings right now because obviously, you know, all that stuff is on everyone's minds right now, like, you know, with the election and everything. So, not that it's directly related, but also that's not that it's not directly related. Okay, let's take a look at this. Any last details we want to just quickly throw in? I'm going to darken up his beard just really quick. Oh, it looks green. What the heck? It's because it's yellow on the camera. I'm going to just brown that up a little bit. There we go. There we go. Nice. That looks awesome. I'm going to throw a little halo around baby Jesus. I know it's like a little tiny detail. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, let's step back for a second. It's 9 o'clock right now, so technically we're supposed to wrap up right now. Okay. Nice. Okay. I think we're going to wrap it up right here. Yeah, I could have just cut it. You know, it's funny because I said that it was going to naturally suit a more vertical format, and we kind of just ended up doing it in a vertical format. But I think we're just going to cut it here. You know, if I wanted to finish it, I could just draw these lines, but I'm not going to, honestly. I'll remove the paints over here. I like to get the view of the finished. All right. All right. This is good. This is good. Okay. I think we're going to wrap it up here. It's looking pretty dope. I say this every single time without exception, but I always feel like I have to do a recap at the end. But we don't need to because you were literally here for it. But some surprises. I kind of feel like it came out okay here, but I'm going to push this like... I never really took the flat lotus thing that I have from looking at a lot of Eastern art and then taking it to a lateral, like flat rose like that. I didn't exactly get it with the pointed petals, but I'm going to try and like push that a little bit for some other drawings. And I haven't done like nice flowers like this in a while, but it feels good. Otherwise, this is dope though. This is dope. Oh yeah, we also looked at that picture and I really like the bust in the rose, in the flower. That's dope. We got the Tiny Mary. Perfect. Perfect. So I think we're going to call it. It's 9:02. We haven't wrapped up late in a while. Not really late, but it's all good. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much. We talked about time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, spending your precious time with me. And now we're going to go back to the fray, to the battle. Actually, we got one last question. This is perfect. I'll take this last question just because I saw it's RKD, and actually it's a good question. Any thoughts on Valentin Tomberg? I bought a book of his, and it's next to my reading list. Yeah, he's kind of one of the cooler Christian esoterica guys who goes from like occult world, hermetica world into Christianity. I read Meditations on the Tarot. I thought it was a little weird, but I don't know that much about him. But Meditations on the Tarot is like kind of the hallmark book there. Maybe we'll start out talking about that on the next stream. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming through. Thank you so much for watching. I really love doing this, so thanks for coming through. And thank you for partaking in the spiritual battle. Sometimes it's political, sometimes it's culinary, sometimes it's social, sometimes it's biological, it's so many things, ethical, ontological, it has many fronts, but I'm sure if you're here, you're partaking of it to some extent, and now we go back to the field. Thanks for coming, and I will see you guys on the internet where we all hang out together. I will see you guys later.